Welcome to Adjusted Reality, a podcast series trusted by the adjusted and brought to you by the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress, where we learn from athletes, celebrities, influencers, and healthcare professionals about how to optimize health in a fun, relatable way. Join me, Dr. Sherry McAllister, as I speak with professional endurance athlete and author, Travis Macy. Finisher of over 120 ultra endurance events in 17 countries. Travis Macy is a speaker, author, coach, and professional endurance athlete. He is the author of the Ultra Mindset, an endurance champion's 8 core principles for success in business, sports, and life. And he set a record for Leadman, an epic endurance event consisting of a trail running marathon, 50-mile mountain bike race, Leadville 100 mountain bike race, 10K road run, and Leadville 100 run, all above 10,000 feet in the beautiful Rocky Mountains. Travis leads authentically to empower others to make the most of their lives through his work as an endurance coach, a podcaster, speaker, and writer. And he just released his latest book, A Mile at a Time, a father and son's inspiring Alzheimer's journey of love, adventure, and hope, written by Travis and Mark Macy with Patrick Regan. The heroic mindset is where we're at. And I want to welcome, Travis, you to Adjusted Reality.
Well, thanks, Dr. McAllister. It's awesome to be here with you and glad to share a conversation with the audience.
It's super fun to have you because you have done so many eclectic things in your life that it's hard to even wrap my head around. And because there is so much to cover in so little time, let's go to the very beginning. You're a young son of your dad's. Obviously, Macy set a very big imprint in your life. Can you tell me, you watched your dad do all of these adventure events and endurance, and that's part of this. It's one thing to do an adventure, but it's usually doubled down with it's a long, very long haul. What clicked with you? What was it in when you think back as a little boy watching your dad? What really made it click for you that this is what I want to do?
Well, one of my favorite early childhood memories is the Leadville 100 trail run. Starting in 1988 was the first year that my dad did it. And I was about 5 years old. And I just remember driving up to this little mining town in Colorado and, me, my mom, my dad, my little sister, Caitlin, and there's something special about the mountains, about the atmosphere, about these adults who are out there doing something really, really hard and uncertain. I remember the race director, Ken Kluber. He's this old cowboy and miner who created this event to reignite the economy in Leadville after it had crashed, after the mine was closed. And before the race, we're in this little gym in 6th Street there, at 10,200 feet. And Ken's standing up there and he's saying things like, you're better than you think you are. You can do more than you think you can. Grits, guts, determination. And, it's a message that stuck with me. And I remember driving around out there and seeing not only my dad, but just these other people starting running at 4 a.m. when it's freezing cold, and then they're still running in the middle of the day. It's hot out, and then mid-afternoon in Leadville, it's always raining and often snow, hail, lightning, and then you get back into running all night long, and it's freezing cold again. And I just that stuck with me, and from the start, there was a sense of like, oh, I think I want to do this kind of stuff at some point in my life, and I was doing regular sports, playing team sports as a kid, and I'm still a huge fan of team sports. And I got to watch my dad continue doing his running and triathlon and snowshoe racing and adventure racing. And I also saw, into his 40s and 50s, like this stuff starts to to wear on your body, and not only in aging that wears on our bodies as well. But I remember clearly, one of my dad's best friends was and is a guy named Dale Peterson in Denver, who's a chiropractor. And Dale was also just a phenomenal athlete in his own right, doing the Ironman and marathons and ultra running races. And, so he was a guy who talk the talk and walk the walk. But, I just remember Dad would wake up or he'd come after a race and he'd be all stiff and sore. Man, I got to go see Dale. And, he'd get in there and Dale would make some special appointment for him, usually during the lunch hour or whatever. And I just remember Dad saying, like, man, I went in there, Dale, crunched on this and crunched on that. And what do you know? I feel better. So
outstanding. Bringing
yeah.
together that kind of mentality and having your dad be such a role model for you, which is quite beautiful in today's society, is spending that quality time of just having fun. And for those that have not seen it yet, I'm going to encourage them. The Eco Challenge is on Amazon Prime. And if you have a Saturday afternoon and you can pop some popcorn, it is such a fun ride to watch those 10 episodes and really see how the engagement of these adventure runs go. And it is really an adventure. And, it reminds me when I was little of, watching Davy Crockett. And, I'm clearly aging myself, but the beauty and unknown wilderness. And like you said, having weather to deal with, but also you can easily get lost and move forward. So as you kind of think about that, I want the audience to know you have your latest book out, and it's A Mile at a Time. And it is a beautifully written book, Travis. You should be very, very proud. It will engage you. And if you need some inspiration, it will certainly give you that and much, much more. But let's talk about A Mile at a Time, starting with, why did you name it that?
Well, we just wanted to kind of share the mindset and the idea of taking things a mile at a time, whether that's, you're out there in an adventure race or an ultra run, or, I love the Trappers and Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier, man, that I totally eat that stuff up. And my dad always said he moved to Colorado, with my mom in 1980, basically because he wanted to be a mountain man, and an adventurer. So, but yeah, back to the book. It's just taking things one step at a time, focusing on what you're doing. And especially when things get hard, if we look at the entire journey in front of us, whether that is, like you said in Fiji, a 671-kilometer adventure race, or whether it's an ultra run, or whether it's, someone's rehab from a back injury that, okay, right now I'm at step number 1 and I want to be at step number 50, and getting there is completely overwhelming, right? And you can't do it in one day. Or maybe it's your journey with, Alzheimer's or cognitive decline, like we're navigating in my family. If you look at the entire process, it's just absolutely overwhelming. But if you break it down and you take it a mile at a time, often things become more bearable. You're able to make a plan, and then you're able to execute as a team, taking things just kind of as they come.
It's well said. And I know that your father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. When you signed up for this race, you weren't sure exactly how that was going to play in. And as a son, I know there's a lot of worry that goes into when you bring a family member on board, because you don't really know how this is going to go. I remember seeing the twins that were in the Eco Challenge as well. And here's 2 girls set back to back, Indian girls from India that really had each other's back as sisters. And family was a big part of the Eco Challenge, and watching the families come together and be such an amazing support group. Now, if you've never heard of the Eco Challenge, it's okay. We'll tell you what it is right now. It's the world's toughest race. The Eco Challenge Fiji was a grueling 7-day, 400-mile marathon of trekking, climbing, biking, paddling through the jungle in 2020. I've never seen as many muddy, slimy, wet individuals in my life. And I'm sure you could probably also agree it was grueling. Was that one of the toughest things you've ever done in your life?
Yeah, it was. You do these kind of races around the world, like my dad and I have been doing for decades, and a lot of races, have that tagline, "Oh, the world's toughest." And often, when you're out there in the race, it does feel like the world's toughest or the hardest thing that you've ever done. So yeah, physically challenging for sure, and people see that on the program. But for me, given that we were moving at a slower pace, most of these races I've been fortunate enough to, kind of compete at a high level and move fast. So in this case, we were moving a lot slower and sleeping a lot more. So for me, physically, the challenge wasn't quite as significant as other things had been. But mentally and emotionally, absolutely, it was right up there. And you touched on it a bit there even before the race. I just have a lot of anxiety. What are we getting ourselves into? What's the risk of doing this? And very often we look at something that we want to pursue in life and we think, what are the risks, right, of going for it? What I really ended up doing was kind of looking at what are the risks of not going for this, right? If we're just to kind of throw in the towel and say, oh, well, here's this thing we really wanted to do, it's probably dad's last chance, but whatever, too dangerous. I think in this case that was a greater risk to just sort of throw in the towel and say, oh, I'm done, and that's, I think, especially as people age, sometimes they think like, oh, I can't do this anymore, I can't do that, or I can't do it like I used to do, so I'm not going to do it at all. And I say, well, find that middle ground. In this case, dad had planned on racing with his buddies who are all his age, in their 60s. And we kind of realized as a group, well, that's probably not the best fit for anyone, but maybe you can get out there with me and, some folks more in my age group, and we'll be able to do it safely and look out for each other and have a good time. And we did. And so it turned out that, yes, there were the risks of heading out there with Alzheimer's as this unknown fifth teammate. We knew that if, dad got an infection or something, they got these things like leptospirosis floating around in the water out there. And for someone with cognitive decline, often if they get a serious infection, it can significantly impact the cognition. So we knew that there were risks like that. But we also, knew there was even a greater risk of not doing it, and also just the reward of having a great experience together, and maybe being less focused on a specific achievement or outcome, and more on the process and sharing the journey itself. And we're glad we did it. We had a blast.
It really is beautiful to see how you did enjoy the experience throughout watching the Eco Challenge. And one part of it that I really reflected on was the sleep portion of it. And these athletes some of them were like massively sleep deprived. But I applaud you because you recognize the need and the importance of sleep, especially for your dad. Can you touch a little bit on what you've learned with cognitive impairment and sleep? Because we often in adjusted reality, we try to bring them back to, life can be stressful and you can do multiple weeks, months with 3-4 hours sleep. But the body has a unique way of telling you to stop. And it'll share with you in ways that you won't want to, unfortunately, experience if you don't listen. So share with our audience what your experience is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm glad that you asked that, Dr. McAllister. And I'm not a medical expert by any means, but, just from following the sleep science as a layman over the last 5 to 10 years, we know a lot more about how important sleep is and the basic functions that occur. The brain is working while sleeping. And, I always tell the athletes I coach, start with sleep and then go to your nutrition and then see if you can reduce stress. And if you have all those things set, now we're ready to like really make the strides in the training itself. My dad was of a generation, I think, especially of men where, there's a mindset of work hard, and he did that. He put in big hours as a lawyer, and play hard, which he did as we said, an ultra endurance athlete, and kind of sleep when you're dead. And so he was always present, right, for all the kids stuff, all my games, my sister's swim meets, all that kind of stuff. And so what was cut for him consistently for many years was the sleep. And saying, okay, what is the cause of developing Alzheimer's? There's probably not one thing. There's a whole variety of factors. And that's another thing about a chiropractic or holistic medicine practice. You're looking at the mind, the whole body. It's all connected, right? But, we do think for him, chronic sleep deprivation over many years probably was a factor in developing Alzheimer's. So yeah, when it came to the race, people hear that term adventure racing, they often think of sleep deprivation. It often is a big factor in the race. But we realized for our team this year, basically every night we got to sleep as much as we can. With Alzheimer's, disorientation really kicked in for Dad as soon as it got dark. And so we knew that we need to plan ahead. And while trying to stay ahead of these challenging cutoffs, also figure out how are we going to be in a village every night so we can lay down in a dry, warm house and get some real sleep. And that, of course, like I said, added to the strategic and emotional and, cognitive challenge for us. But it also was a fun puzzle to put together, and it created these just, amazing and intimate experiences, coming into people's houses and having, some tea and food with them and chatting a little, and then just going to sleeping in, by our standards, small and simple homes on a bamboo mat, with the people who live there. It was incredible.
Oh, the Fiji people were so warm and they were so welcoming. And it really is touching to see that a race is so much more. It brought together people that had excitement and celebration in their hearts. And those little children, you don't know the impact that you made going through their village, and being the pride when that one young 15-year-old got to put the backpack on and watch the adventure race, but now lead you through some of the terrain.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know the impact that we make at the time, but I can assure you, you could see in their eyes that there was something more. And I was amazed just by watching them, because the gear that was in the race was impressive. But here's these young people, no shoes, very, very little clothing, and just loving life. And that was also very impressive. Travis, there's something about your racing as well. And I think going into the advantage of having your dad as your biggest cheerleader, you're still racing right now. And if I remember correctly, you have two young little people who are now watching through the same eyes you did to watch your dad. How are you getting sleep? How are you managing? Because this is a big part of stress in people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. My kids are 10 and 12 now, so it does feel, we're in the tween stage, so the challenges are different from when your kids are little and they're always in bed with you or not sleeping through the night. So the sleep has been good, and honestly, in our house, I mean, we value an early bedtime, and it's kind of part of the routine. And by 8 o'clock, we're, usually one of us is in bed with one kid reading one book, and the other one's in the bed with the other kid reading another book. And, it's just kind of how we roll. I have, since my dad's Alzheimer's diagnosis, and like I said, since, just more of this reading and learning about sleep science, I've done less frequent early morning big training missions. I love that feeling of, being out there at 5 a.m. in the cold and the snow, skiing up a hill or something, near Salida, Colorado, where I live. I love that feeling, but I've also realized maybe I can be creative, or maybe I can cut other ways that I'm spending time so that, I'm at home before school and helping the kids get ready and driving them to school, and then, doing my training then before I come back to work in the afternoon. And, I know that most people don't have that schedule flexibility, but for me, that's a big driver to be self-employed so that I can fit in the outdoor time, but also continue to have
I
sleep.
love that you say that you're trying to alter your schedule to kind of get in more of your own self-care. And I too really, I find if I don't do it at 5 a.m., it may not get done. So there's
Yeah.
still that bit of a struggle because you're
Yep.
so used to doing it as the first thing. Like that's kind of like your wake up, your cup of
Yeah.
coffee, and you're ready to go. So well done. Now, going back to your adventure. I want to talk about tough lessons because we've all had significant tough lessons over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
But here you are in a 400-mile adventure. Tell us a little bit about the things that you really learned while you were on this momentous trail.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the first one and a big standout to me, you already mentioned the Fijian people, and I think any impact that we may have left with them, in my opinion, is comes nothing close to the ways that they impacted us. Because the Fijian people, they have this word and sort of a spirit. It's called bula, 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 bula. You run through town and everyone's yelling that. And I don't know the direct translation, but I think it's maybe somewhere similar to, like, in Hawaiian culture, you have the aloha spirit, or in Costa Rica, you have pura vida. And it's just this spirit of generosity and of enthusiasm, and I think of communal living and of life really as a team sport. Like, that's the sense that they give off. So, for me, that was probably the biggest takeaway: is how can I bring this spirit back to my own life, to my family and our journey with Alzheimer's, but then to, my community here in a small town of Salida, Colorado, spreading that enthusiasm and just the passion, whether it's for adventure or just kind of for communal living, helping each other out, right? Finding the time to chip in to do things for other people and not always be too busy kind of in our own heads and stuff. So that was a huge takeaway. And then for me, and I also think for Dad, it going through that race experience left us both better prepared for what's to come in the Alzheimer's journey. And for me, especially, that was taking on and feeling more comfortable with a new role, in our family. I think as we age and as our parents age, it's natural to, shift in roles of, caretaking or organizing things, or, all those kind of things. It's very natural. And for me, it came abruptly and a lot sooner than I expected. Dad was 64 when he was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, and I was going along, in my mid 30s, thinking, well, I'm an adult, I own a house, I have a job, I have kids, like, whatever. And all of a sudden, this Alzheimer's thing came along, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I realized, like, I need to grow up here. Like this, I need to be an adult in a whole new way. And it was not easy to take that on. And going through that race for me, back to use that word heroic, and I don't think anything that we did is more heroic than what a lot of people do, taking caretakers at home, supporting a friend or a family member. I mean, that stuff happens every single day, and you don't see it on TV, but it is the day to day. That's where the heroism is. But for me, I think I like the term heroic journey. I used to be a high school English teacher, and you read these books and all the classics. So I like looking at things through that lens. And for me, this race became sort of a rite of passage, and just looking at it that way and reflecting on it that way in my head as this journey that allowed me to be more ready for the next step. That was super helpful. And it's helped me, as I think of my sense of where I am now and what am I capable of doing. It's kind of, back to Ken Kluber, you're better than you think you are. You can do more than you think you can. Shortly after Dad was diagnosed, I called up Ken, who's a close family friend. And I called him in tears and I said, Ken, I got to let you know my dad has Alzheimer's. And that was obviously hard for Ken to hear as well. But, he basically said, son, it's time for you to step up here and, take the lead. And I'm glad he said that. And he was the perfect person to say it to me.
Absolutely. I mean, someone who has led so many, and even in the name Leadville, it's really, this is a village of people leading each other and
Yeah.
supporting one another. And even after there has been a lot of social isolation, I love that you bring it back to the communal living and the communal mindset is
Hmm.
how do we reflect on helping our family and helping our community be the best they can be? Because they are better than they think they are. And there has been a lot of mental challenges that we have all gone through, whether it been COVID or grief or losing a loved one or being diagnosed with
Yep.
a disease. And I think you've brought some tough lessons. I want to bring it back to health, though, because health is one of the critical pieces to our lives. It's what I classify as the golden nugget. If you
Mm.
don't have it, it's a very difficult thing to move through in life. And let's go back to your recoveries for some of the races that you've done. And maybe share, just so that they can have the scale, share one of your longest races aside from the Eco Challenge, and then tell us a little bit about how your body feels at the very end, and then what do you do for self-care? We both laugh because we know what
Yeah.
recovery is like, being hit by a bat 10 times over and then wondering, okay, when's the next pain going to start? But
Yeah.
going back to it, let's talk about self-care and where you're at with that. So
Hmm.
first, longest race you've done since the Eco Challenge. Second, how badly do you feel and what areas hurt? And then third, what's your self-care regimen?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Boy, hard to remember. I mean, I guess longest race since then would probably be maybe a 50-mile trail run, or I've gotten into, this may sound really weird, but it is another way to get beat up physically, if not mentally. There's a sport in Colorado called pack burro racing, and it's a high altitude trail run where everyone has a donkey on a leash, and it kind of harkens back to the mining spirit of towns like Leadville. And in fact, Leadville is one of the places we do these. So those have a lot of uncertainty, and you can absolutely be out there all day with an animal that might be dragging you along full speed down a rocky slope, or maybe you're trying to push and pull it up to the top of Mosquito Pass, at 12,800 feet or whatever it is. And yeah,
Very
these races.
creative, Travis. Very creative.
Yeah, it is a real thing. People can look it up online. And if anyone's at all interested, come out to Colorado, because talk about an adventure and just like you said, fun. It's fun, it's uncertain, it's a fun community. But I digress. Back to how does it make you feel? I mean, these races, especially the long ones, the adventure races, or running 100 miles, or I used to do a lot of 24-hour mountain bike races where you're riding a mountain bike nonstop for 24 hours. I mean, man, it makes stuff hurt. One of those races, it was an underground, unofficial mountain bike race. You start in Moab, Utah at midnight, and the goal is to race as fast as you can across the Kokopelli Trail. It's 152 miles, and you finish in Fruita, Colorado, through the desert all night long. No supply, no aid station. You got to carry all your own food and water. And a few hours into that race, I flew off a drop, and my front bike wheel landed in some sand, and the handlebars turned sideways. And I flew over the handlebars and landed on my shoulder and smashed my collarbone to pieces. And that, the broken clavicle is a fairly common road and mountain biking injury. And a fellow competitor picked me up and basically pulled the plug on his own race to save me, and we finally made it back to the hospital and got things fixed up, and finally I ended up getting surgery. I got a plate installed, and where this connects back is I then worked with Jeremy Rogers, who's a chiropractor and now a very close friend in the Boulder, Colorado area. And at that time, I was a 22-year-old kid with hardly any money or resources. And he basically helped me almost for free. And he, did the manipulations and the exercises and the rehab. He let me borrow a bone stem machine, that helped the bone regrow faster, and just made a huge difference for me, not only physically, but just personally, to help me get back. At that time, kind of this was my main source of income, doing these races, get me back out there as fast as I can. And it really made an impact. There's been a handful of people who have helped me like that, and now that I'm in a position to maybe I can help a young athlete with free coaching or guidance or something like that. They've just inspired me to do that.
You have a heart of gold, and I think it shows in so many of the things that you do. Is you're all about the what can I give, and not looking at what you can receive. And I think you've lived your entire life that way, but I think that's probably from your dad and your mom. I read the book, and I have to say, if I was to pick one person in your family I'd most like to be like, it'd be your mom.
Yeah,
She is a
yeah. Well,
rock star, steadfast, steady as you can go. And I want to give a shout out to her, but can you, I know your dad is an ultra marathoner, but I look at how your mom put together all of the pieces, and I love how gentle and kind you were in the book about your mom. And if you want to learn self-care, you usually learn it from a nurturer in your family,
mm-hmm.
and your mom speaks volume. So give a shout out to your mom and tell the audience a little bit more about her.
Yeah, I don't know how she does it, Dr. McAllister. She's amazing. She had a liver transplant in 1990. She got from the liver transplant, she got hepatitis C from a blood transfusion, and that plus the immunosuppressant medications did a number on her kidneys, and so she ended up getting a kidney from her brother Brian about 10 years after that. And then that kidney kind of did its job for 15 years and started running out of juice as well. And she got another kidney from her brother Eric Pence in 2017. And yeah, I mean, through that, she's continued to stay active and, to take care of herself, and now more and more, act as the primary caregiver for my dad as Alzheimer's progresses, and just be amazingly self-aware. You talk about this, self-care. I mean, that's the first kind of lesson or rule of caregiving is first you got to take care of yourself. And, she's amazing. And finding little windows to get outside and to be active, whether it's, I was at my parents' house a couple of weeks ago, and here we are, Colorado winter. And it's like, Mom, can I shovel the deck? And she's like, no, honey, I really like shoveling the deck. And I'm like, are you kidding, Mom? But that's like, she does that for exercise. And now she's on this program of like doing sit-ups and doing kind of chin-ups and a bent arm hang kind of thing. She's got one of those little doorway pull-up things, and that's huge because she's trying to keep her bones as strong as possible, and not be susceptible to falls and stuff. So it's super impressive. Sometimes you think about something like running 100 miles in Leadville, like, yeah, that's really hard, but honestly, it's mental and physical training for the truly hard things in life that are going to hit us all in one way or another. Sometimes we see them coming, and sometimes we don't, but we got to be ready, and we got to be just resilient and ready to take it on.
Yeah, she's rock solid. So when you go to your parents again, hug her for me on Adjusted Reality, because all the mothers out there know that it cannot be more stressful to watch your loved ones do these things and be there as support, but also be strong and go through your own health challenges. And as you mentioned in the book, she never complained. It was like you would even not know, because it was Mom, and she's like the steel foundation that brings the family together, and didn't miss a beat. So for all those mothers listening, I give kudos to you when you take care of yourself, self-care, but also recognize that we do understand how stressful it is to watch our children and our spouse go on a 400-mile adventure like that. Talk to me about your self-care. What do you do to ensure your healing and you're providing your own sense of balance?
Honestly, for me, the biggest things are exercise and time outside. And like I said, I've been lucky to, with intention, pull together a lifestyle where I get to do that a lot. And yes, sometimes the training or putting in the miles, sometimes it does feel like work, and it is part of my job, although the racing is, not as much of the quote job as it used to be. But I continue to love it. I always feel better after going outside, and that could be alone, which a lot of my excursions are. It could be with, my wife and or my kids, as they get older and we enjoy downhill skiing and stuff together. Very often it's with my dogs. They're my adventure buddies, mostly running, but also, doing some ski tours and shorter mountain bike rides.
Do
Often
you
it's
do
with.
yoga for that? I mean, when you're doing
Mhm.
your post
Yep.
recovery, if you were to kind of pick your top favorite three in your
Yep.
post recovery, you mean you just banged yourself up after a 50-mile run, you come back. What are your top three
Yeah.
post recovery things?
Number one is sleep. Number two is nutrition, and then number three would be, I guess, a combination, you would say, of yoga, nerve flossing, which is kind of a yoga type sort of thing, range of mobility, and then also I would throw into that basket treatment by professionals, especially if something's really bothering me, and more and more I'm getting older like everyone else. I wake up, man, and stuff hurts, or maybe I
Yeah.
have an acute injury, whether that's a bike crash, or you overdo it a bit in a running event or something. So I mean, currently my resource is a guy named Dr. Nathan Herndon here in Salida. He has Salida Sport and Spine, and kind of like my dad used to do with Dale. Man, something's really hurting. And the last time I was in there, he made a special appointment with me at 7 a.m. and I went in there and he started cranking and pulling and cracking stuff. And I tell you what, I felt a whole lot better. I say the same thing to my endurance coaching clients. Professional help is so important, whether that's with me as a coach, and often as a coach I'm helping people do less so they don't overdo it. Maybe it's professional mental health support. I'm a huge fan of counseling, therapy, psychologists, all that, or professional help in the physical realm, whether that's a chiropractor or a PT or something like that. Don't always try to figure it out yourself. These things cost money, but they will usually in the long run save you both time and money. And, when you look at like your own wellness, it's so important. What I often tell myself is, for me to be my best for my family, I really do have to take care of myself as well as I can, physically and mentally. And that doesn't always mean that things are always perfect or I always get to exercise as much as I want, but if you take care of yourself, you're going to be able to show up a lot better to support the people you love.
That cannot be said better, because when you reflect on all the things that you buy in your life, you purchase healthcare and you build that healthcare team as a future stock that will pay off in dividends if you use it appropriately. And you're right. Sometimes we have these little naggy things that we're like, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. You got to get to it. You really do have to have those moments where you reflect on, your knee's been bugging you, but you haven't done anything about it. And if I have to be quite honest, and you went out there listening and you got that naggy pain, just go take care of it, because it needs the proper self-care that, we're adjusting your reality. You have to take care of it now so that your future will be bright and strong. Well, now for the people out there that have really gone through some pretty tough times, and you as well, with a tough season and the diagnosis of your dad and some personal career changes for you. For those that are out there and they have someone close to them, or they themselves are suffering, give us some of your mindset tips that you would give them to provide hope in moving forward.
Yep. Well, the long answer would be either in the Ultra Mindset book, that's all about kind of these mental strategies, or we have in the new one coming out a mile at a time, the back of the book is some kind of semi-prescriptive material where we share, again, nothing here is a silver bullet, but here's things that have helped our family, mostly in the mindset department. More briefly, I'll say that my dad, Macy's always been a man of sort of sayings and mantras. I remember just as a little kid biking up hills with him, keep hammering, bud, don't stop till you're at the top. And like his voice, it continues to echo in my head, and it's really nice. It's calming and it's a happy memory for me, even as he's able to articulate those things less. But I also find myself trying to articulate some of those things to him, whether it's things that he said or other stuff in my own words. And to the more recent mantras, one of them is a saying from the ultra running world, and it's just it never always gets worse. And that's kind of the idea that things could look really bad out there on the race course, or maybe in your relationship, or you're having a really hard parenting moment, or an injury, returning from an injury, or maybe you have chronic pain, right? These things are really hard, and often logic would tell us like, oh, it's this bad now and it's not going to get better. But I don't think that's always the case. I think if we keep the faith, and for me that means keep the faith in yourself and your perseverance and the people around you and progressing science, even our Alzheimer's journey, like, well, things have moved forward for that, but I still have faith in science that things may come around that are helpful, right? That stop the or slow the decline. So it's again, that the wording's kind of funny, but it never always gets worse. Keep the faith. That's another one that we say, and also recently we've been spreading the idea that we just keep going as fast as we can and as slow as we must. And, for the last few years, like since that race, if there was another eco challenge, I don't think Dad wouldn't be on the starting line, but we've continued going as fast as we can. So like the year after that, we did another race in Leadville, a 50-kilometer running race. And then, the year after that, it was a half marathon. And I think this year it'll probably be a 10K. So, things don't look exactly like they used to, but we're still moving forward as we can. And I think, again, if you're working through pain or coming back from an injury, like for me, my lower back is kind of my Achilles tendon, Achilles heel, just like it, as people saw in that race. My dad, he's got chronic back issues, but if things flare up and feel worse, I just have to keep telling myself like, okay, I'm going to move as fast as I can here with the rehab, with staying consistent, with getting professional help, doing all these little things on a daily process to keep it moving forward. But I also have to go as slow as I must. And maybe that means changing my workout routine or not doing something I was planning on doing or whatever. Like you have to be realistic with it. So it's, often holding opposing views in mind at the same time, and just, stick with it and keep the faith.
Sagely advice. And Travis, it is such a wonderful opportunity to meet with you, to read the book, to watch the Eco Challenge. And I'm going to keeping my eye on you because I know there's so much more that you'll be contributing to on so many different levels, because you're touching hearts and you're changing minds, and the outcomes to which we all want to achieve is building a family of people like you that are encouraging and supportive and caring. So I want to sincerely thank you on behalf of our podcast, Adjusted Reality, for joining us today.
Well, thanks, Dr. McAllister. Awesome to be here. I really appreciate it. If you're listening to this and you're a healthcare professional of some sort, just know that you're appreciating. And I think and most people already know this, but know that it's not only like what you're doing physically as far as manipulations or rehab and all that kind of stuff. It's also like what you bring with that Bula spirit, right? The people, the health professionals who've really helped me and continue to help me over the years. It's also, it's like their spirit and their energy that rubs off. You're getting that body work or the manipulation or whatever it is. And usually you're in conversation with this person. And I've had, worked with some people, man, I come out of there and not only physically do I feel better, but mentally I feel like $1,000,000 and I'm rejuvenated and I'm confident and kind of ready to take it on. So I think that's something that professionals really have the ability to make an impact.
Oh, well said. Bula to those healthcare professionals listening
Yeah.
and to the people that are getting the care from them. It always feels good to get a compliment from a patient that is deserving and that has really helped you make the best of your life. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Adjusted Reality.
Yeah, thanks. Awesome. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for tuning into Adjusted Reality as we spoke to Travis Macy about his latest book, A Mile at a Time, a father and son's inspiring Alzheimer's journey of love, adventure, and hope. An exclusive look of what it is like participating in the world's toughest race, Eco Challenge Fiji, a grueling 7-day, 400-mile marathon of trekking, climbing, biking, paddling through the jungle in 2020 with his father, Mark Macy. This brings to light a heroic mindset for who you are, your self-care, your journey to places unknown, as fast as you can and as slow as you must. If you would like to adventure into hearing more from Travis Macy and his dad, you can visit their podcast, The Travis Macy Show. This podcast was brought to you by the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress. As a special gift for listening today, visit f4cp.org/health to get a copy of our Mind, Body, Spirit ebook, which focuses on many ways to optimize your health and the ones you love without the use of drugs or surgery. Now, don't forget to subscribe, share the podcast with family, friends, rate and review. And if you're feeling inspired to learn more about chiropractic or to find a doctor of chiropractic near you, visit f4cp.org/find-a-doctor. We appreciate your support and look forward to checking in with you again soon.